Today is the Feast of the Divine Mercy, a devotion that was very dear to the heart of Pope John Paul II. And I think most of you probably know quite a bit about the Divine Mercy, but for those of you who don't, a nun, sister, now Saint Faustina, in Krakow, Poland, began to have visions in which the Lord told her to share a word, a prophetic word with the world about God's mercy. And the centerpiece of that vision was that she was to teach a simple prayer: Jesus, I trust in you. Now, that all doesn't sound terribly profound. I mean, it's nothing we didn't know. Well, what makes it profound is the place and the time in which God spoke to the world through Sister Faustina. It was in Krakow in the late 1930s. She died just before the outbreak of the Second World War. In Krakow, one of the most beautiful cities in Poland, it's a beautiful medieval city famous for its churches and its icons, and I believe the Black Madonna is, Our Lady of Częstochowa, is not far from there. It's a beautiful place. But it became the very epicenter of the evil of the 20th century, which Pope Leo XIII saw in a vision as the devil's own century. If we have nothing else to thank God for, we can thank God we survived the 20th century. It's another story for another time, but Leo XIII was in prayer and he was shaken by a vision, and popes don't usually have visions. They're too busy for visions, but Pope Leo had a vision in which he saw clearly that the 20th century was the devil's century. Well, there was something else other than beautiful churches and monasteries and medieval art and godly people in Krakow. Out in the outskirts of Krakow was Auschwitz, the death camp. And in the very heart of the evil of that century, God spoke a word about His mercy and asked us to trust Him. And the profundity of that word, that restatement of faith, because as I'm always telling you, the word faith in its root means trust. We think of faith as a series of intellectual propositions to which we give assent. And though there is an intellectual component in faith, what faith really means is to trust a person. I believe in the Trinity. I believe in the survival of death. I believe that this body, once it is dust and ashes, will somehow be raised up because I trust Jesus of Nazareth, the Messiah. So that was, in a nutshell, the devotion of the Divine Mercy that we celebrate today. Mercy. What is mercy? You're very patient people because you sit through my sermons with Greek verbs and Hebrew nouns and all that, but you're one congregation that can appreciate it because I bet most people who are here speak more than one language fluently. Isn't that unusual? And you know sometimes translating things is very hard. For instance, Italian. What's with the word ciao? I mean, ciao means hello, it means goodbye, right? Ciao. Well, imagine the poor Italian learning English. How do you say ciao? Well, when you come in, you say hello. When you leave, you say goodbye. Well, which is which? Why don't they just have one word? Well, because one is when you come in and one is when you go out. Have you ever met an Italian immigrant who's struggling with English who, when they walk in, waved you goodbye? No, that's hello. Hello, goodbye, ciao, come va? You know? Language is a funny thing. And we have the same problem with the word mercy. What is mercy? Well, there are two words in Hebrew in the Old Testament that are translated as mercy in Greek. One is racham, which means, you all got that, racham, resh, okay. It means mercy felt. Compassion is what it means, mercy felt. But the other one is chesed, which means mercy shown. It can be translated as kindness, as love, as mercy. Racham. Well, that's mercy felt. However, And when we read in the book of Hosea, the 6th chapter, the 6th verse, it is mercy I desire and not sacrifice. That is chesed. It is mercy shown. It's kindness. You know, the Divine Mercy devotion is double-edged, like the swords of our Knights of Columbus. They are double-edged, aren't they? I don't know if your swords are double-edged or they're single-edged. Work on that. But, well, it's a double-edged sword, as Scripture is. We're to meditate and to understand and appreciate the mercy God has had for us. But an essential component of the devotion of divine mercy is to show mercy. Let's think about that. To show mercy. Well, in the gospel today, don't you always have trouble with that? It sort of jars us. We're so, after the Second World War, we're so sensitive to the issue of anti-Semitism that the disciples were locked away for fear of the Jews. That kind of jars us, especially living in Skokie. Well, you got to understand, strictly speaking, the word Jew doesn't really appear in the New Testament. The word is Judaios, which means Judean, which I suspect was a religious political party, the party in authority. There were Essenes, there were Levites, there were lots of different types of what we would call Jews. So don't worry about that so much. They were locked away for fear of the authorities, but they were most certainly locked away for fear of one Jew, the Jewish Messiah, Jesus of Nazareth. They had betrayed him. Understand that they, as surely as Pilate and Judas, had betrayed him. Peter had denied him, cursed and sworn he did not know the man. The others had run out, except for John the Evangelist, who was a close relative of Jesus. And you know, I really suspect that John stood at the foot of the cross because his mother was there. They were close relatives to Mary and to Jesus. And John did not have the choice. I wonder, might he have also run? Well, they betrayed him. And then they heard rumors from the women who'd visited the tomb and from Peter and John that his body was gone. And at one point, I believe it's in the Gospel of Luke, Jesus says, "Don't be afraid, I'm not a ghost. Touch me and see. Have you got anything to eat?" They were afraid that Jesus was returning to punish them justly for what they had done. And he came back and he showed them his hands and his side and said, "Peace be with you. Peace be with you. Look what you've done to me. And I still love you with a love that death itself cannot conquer." That was mercy. You know, mercy implies power. For me to have mercy on you implies that I have power. Well, I don't have power. Oh, yes, you do. We all have power one over another. You know, what do we want from life? Really very simple things. One of the things we really want is simply to be liked and to be tolerated. And we are so unkind to each other sometimes. We live in an unkind age. When the prophet Hosea said, speaking for God, "It is mercy I desire and not sacrifice," he used the word chesed, kindness. It is kindness I desire and not sacrifice. Kindness. Kindness is mercy applied.